Hey film buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. I haven't reviewed a film in a while since I think it was Free Guy, and I went to the movies on Tuesday and watched Eternal, so I thought this is a good opportunity for me to do a film review, kind of give my opinion on a film that a lot of people seem to be hating on, to see kind of what you guys think, so you can let me know down in the comments if you've seen the movie, do you like it or not. If you haven't seen the film, some of the stuff that I mention in here isn't really going to make any sense, and there are going to be spoilers. I'll put a note down below that says when spoilers are coming. It's going to be pretty soon, but I'll just give my general consensus of the film to start. So, for starters, I don't think this film was nearly as bad as what the Rotten Tomatoes score would indicate. I think it is kind of worth a watch if you haven't seen it. A 46% seems kind of low for me. It was by far not the best film I've ever seen. And it wasn't the worst film that I've ever seen either. And it wasn't even the worst MCU film that I've seen. I think people were being unfairly harsh to this, but I do think that it shouldn't have been a movie to begin with. I think that it should have been a Disney Plus series to kind of give a little bit of breathing room to each of the characters to let them kind of come into their own. When you have 10 different characters that you're introducing in one film and you're trying to connect it back to the MCU and for it to be its own thing and be a team up, I think having 8 hours on Disney Plus where you can spend half of an episode focusing on one Eternal and a half an episode focusing on another, like introducing Angelina Jolie's character and kind of showing why she's going through the struggles that she's going, and you could even start with her and Gilgamesh in kind of seclusion and then work backwards to kind of show why they are that way. I think that would have boded well more for this, and I think the reason why Marvel didn't do that is because they were burned with the Inhuman series. It did very poorly. It's sort of a similar type of story being told, and I think they wanted to do a movie instead because I think that they think if they would have done Inhumans in theaters, it would have done better. But you have to be careful with that as well, because if you do a TV series, I think, in my opinion, Loki kind of fell into this, and maybe some Falcon and the Winter Soldier a little bit, where you have dead space that you gotta fill in the cracks. So maybe they were afraid of that. But if you focused on two characters at a time, like Thena and Gilgamesh, and kind of giving them their separate backstories of how they ended up where they were, I think could have filled out a series where what we got in the movie did feel a little rushed. It was kind of shallow backstory, and they really tried to shoehorn a lot of Marvel MCU stuff in there to the detriment of this film, I think. I'll probably get into spoiler stuff right now, so I'll give you a couple of seconds if you haven't seen it to click away. Okay, so there is a dinner scene where they're talking about...
So now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are both gone, who do you think's gonna lead the Avengers?
But it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like it was something that they would be having conversation of the way that it started. It was just they were sitting there and the conversation got started. Geared in that direction, where if we kind of show the aftermath of the blip from the Eternals' point of view, kind of like they did in WandaVision with Rambeau waking up and seeing that kind of aftermath of the blip, I think would have done more credence to this movie than just naming Captain America and Doctor Strange somewhere in the film. Speaking of shoehorn elements, there was this weird subplot kind of analogy with Peter Pan, where Ikaris is Peter Pan and Sprite is Tinkerbell and Wendy is Cersei's and the rest are Lost Boys. And I thought that analogy was really dumb. I didn't think it fit as well as the clever writer thought it was going to. But if you would have fleshed that out and kind of seen Sprite's relationship with Cersei's and Ikaris at the same time through a Disney Plus series, I think that analogy would have had more weight. But they didn't go that route. They put it in a movie. So I feel like some of that got left cut where the analogy really didn't make as much sense. You just knew that Sprite was in love with Ikaris, which kind of felt, again, shoehorned in. The dialogue was a little wonky with this as well, where they're trying to fit in funny moments, kind of do the hero team-up, quippy, Joss Whedon-esque dialogue.
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
But it kind of fell flat here. It wasn't as good as the Avengers. It was never going to be as good as the Avengers. Avengers has so much build up behind it and so much storytelling behind it that one film couldn't reach that level of character introduction and just entertainment value in general. The quippiness kind of led to weird dialogue beats and moments. Like there's a scene where they go to Gilgamesh and they're like, hey, Ajak is dead. And without having any interaction between that, Sprite goes, it's true, buddy, we lost her. That line delivery and that just the dialogue in general was very strange to me, and I didn't like how a lot of the scenes were written. They made the Eternals seem less human, where I think the point was they are very human because they've been on Earth for 7,000 years. Look at them living their human-esque lives, and a lot of their dialogue seemed less human than listening to Mark Zuckerberg talk about Sweet Baby Ray's.
That is going on the ribs. Sweet Baby Ray's. Sweet Baby Ray's. Sweet Baby Ray's. Sweet Baby Ray's is very good. Sweet Baby Ray's. Sweet Baby Ray's. We have just applied the Sweet Baby Ray's. Sweet Baby Ray's. Sweet Baby Ray's.
Just didn't really fit with what I think they were going for. To me, there seemed like there was an acting gap where an actor like Gemma Chan did a really good job with what she was given, and I think she did a great performance, but then there were other actors that seemed kind of cardboard cutout-esque and really just were reading what they were given, and I didn't have the same draw to those characters as I did with Cersei. And I'll let you choose which characters you think did well or did not well. It's subjective. It's not really something that you're going to choose and everybody's going to think the same thing. Maybe you thought they all did well. I thought there was an acting gap, and I think some of the characters in general were kind of poorly written. I thought Druig was a little turd, and I didn't like his character, but his chemistry he had with Makkari I really liked. I think Lauren Ridloff did an extremely good job with that character. If they're going to continue the Eternals, the two characters that I want to see return are Cersei's and Makkari. I think that those two in general were the best characters in the film. That goes a lot to their actresses being great with what they were given. Kind of general funny observations that I had was, one, I don't think that the explanations that we were given with how they're able to have a job and then move every 5 years, or my great-grandfather was an actor, and my grandfather was an actor, and my father and me, really make a whole lot of sense. And you kind of run into that with something like Wonder Woman, where she's a museum curator, and nobody ever questions how she never ages. I don't think that that is a detriment to this film specifically, but even kind of their explanations didn't really make sense, because if Kumail's character really was his great-grandfather and his father and his grandfather and all that, where is the kid version of him? Is he kidnapping children that kind of look like him to sell the narrative? Or is it kind of like a Blanket Jackson situation where it just kind of comes out of nowhere and, yep, I am the next in the line, you've never seen me before, even though my father was famous type thing? To me, that really didn't make any sense. It made for some funny lines. The side character, the actual human character in the film, I thought had some of the funniest moments.
Actually, when we first met, he thought I was a vampire, and he tried to stake me through the heart.
I've apologized so many times.
Not quite enough times, very close though, I'll let you know.
And the most kind of believable sadness, because he is a human. He's not going to make it through this world-ending event. And I thought that character, and I don't really know his name off the top of my head, I'll put it down here, right here somewhere. I think that he had some of the best lines and the funniest lines of what they were really going for in this film. Another thing, Robb Stark and Jon Snow look way too much alike to be playing the opposite love interests of the main character. To me, it was a little confusing. I knew that Richard Madden and Kit Harington are two different people, but they look very similar. I mean, look at them. And I think that having them play opposite love interests was really kind of confusing for me, especially if you're not really paying that close attention. 3, Ajak lives in the house from Courage the Cowardly Dog. Maybe we'll get a Courage crossover somewhere. 4, I think Cersei was right to not move in with Jon Snow because eventually he's going to die. Now, there's two trains of thoughts with this. You can really go the one route that the film did, where I don't care if my loved ones are going to die. I can't be alone. I love them, and that's fine. That I don't think would be the way that I would look at it, but I think I would follow Cersei's kind of role, and that's kind of character growth for her to make the decision that, yes, I'm going to let myself fall in love with somebody that's not going to be there forever. But that's my opinion. I don't live forever, so I don't have to make that choice. Maybe that's kind of the moral of the story, that you can't be alone forever. More practical for them to be in a relationship with somebody who's going to be around forever like themselves. The next thing, Ikaris flying into the sun was dumb. I understand why they did it. I get the reference. I just thought it was just dumb inclusion. 6, the Eternals are very forgiving. Sprite literally stabbed Cersei's in the back, and Stuber pieced out before the big three-way battle, and they were both brought back into the fold at the end of the film. I think that would have been a little less forgiving, especially getting literally stabbed in the back. Speaking of the three-way battle, it's very convenient that the main Ultra Deviant swims onto the shore right at the time that the final battle is to be taking place. I don't know how he knew where it was supposed to be taking place, or how long it took him to get there, but I just thought that that was very coincidental. Speaking of the Deviants, I am glad that they gave a Deviant some different powers to be able to absorb the powers of the Eternals, because in the beginning I thought it was going to be very boring when they're fighting the Deviants, because they could literally just rip them apart. They just look like giant flying spaghetti monsters that could be ripped apart, and giving him more powers to be able to use, I thought, was a good idea. Also, the CGI in this film was better than I think some Marvel films have been in the past, and I think the Deviants in general looked pretty good for being just tentacles waving around in the shape of animals. I thought that they did a pretty good job. The only criticism of the CGI that I really had, or actually two, is where Cersei's is in a little form, or Ajak in front of the Celestial. That looked really weird to me, but I think it's because I watched it in 3D, because my movie theater lied to me and said that it was a 2D showing until we got there and paid for the 3D pricing. I won't get into that, but the 3D made that scene look really strange. I don't know what it looked like in 2D. And also Patton Oswalt's character at the end, the CGI for that looked awful. But speaking of the 3D, on a positive note, 3D technology has improved since the last 3D movie that I watched, which was Jurassic Park, whenever they re-released it. And it looked a lot better now than it did back then. Maybe it's because they were transferring a 2D movie into 3D, I don't know. But 3D technology has gotten better, and that's a positive note. Nothing really to do with the film, just if you're kind of against 3D, maybe give it a try. I didn't want to, but I was forced to. All in all, this film was fine. It wasn't the best movie I've ever seen, and I think it would have done a lot better if it was on Disney Plus and able to spread the characterization and the backstory out a little bit compared to what we got, a 2-hour and 40-minute film where everything was kind of crammed together. If it gave a little bit of room to breathe, it would have done better. Maybe not initially, maybe not, people wouldn't have tuned in right off the bat, but if they did it well, I think word of mouth would eventually spread to get people to watch it on Disney Plus, especially if they're already paying it to watch Loki or the new Home Alone film. Somebody would eventually watch it if it was on Disney Plus. It's worth a chance. You may have one or two MCU films that rank underneath this, maybe a list that you really don't like of MCU films you think are boring. I gave it a chance and I was pleasantly surprised. I liked it better than I thought I was going to. But that's my opinion, and that's the video, guys. Let me know what you think, like I said, down in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you like the video and want more reviews, let me know. I'm going to watch Ghostbusters Afterlife next week on Tuesday, and maybe we'll do a review on that. Not sure yet, but stick around for that kind of stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.